With me now to discuss is founder and president of Act for America, Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, thanks for being here.
Always delighted to be with you.
All right, sexual jihad. Brigitte, do we even want to know what that is?
Well, a sexual jihad is basically a 24-hour marriage called the mut'a marriage. And that's basically where the jihadists get a chance to, even if they are married, to have outside of their marriage, in a legalized way, to have legal sex with another woman to satisfy them. It is used to motivate jihadists to go into the battleground. As a matter of fact, ISIS actually pays extra for a jihadist, $50 a month for having a sexual slave, on top of what they pay him for having extra wives. So they start with the base salary of about $50 a month. Then for any extra sexual slave you have, they pay you extra money for every extra wife, extra children. So it's a money-making opportunity to keep the jihadists in line, basically fighting with ISIS.
Now, who makes up this rule? This is not a mainstream Muslim practice. Is this something that was just created by ISIS for their own purposes, and then they want to justify it in their own mind as being an okay thing to do?
Well, there is something in Islam justified zawaj al-mut'a, but especially for the Shiite, where you can have a 24-hour marriage, actually sanctified by the religion. The Sunnis don't practice it that much, but ISIS is using every loophole and every way they can in order to justify their action. So basically, al-Baghdadi comes up with ideas, and he says, okay, as a Khalif, I decide that this is a new law, or this is a new fatwa we're going to do, and that's how they are pushing it. And it's truly, these are the ones that we only know about. Just imagine the little cases here and there that never get reported or we never hear about, but it's happening in mass, and it's a tragedy because the world has done nothing to stop it, because this did not just happen this weekend or last week. This happened, as you mentioned earlier, a few months ago, and then last year, and nothing has been done about it.
Right, people just shake their heads, call it a tragedy, but do nothing to stop it. Brigitte, let's talk about these girls. Do we have any idea of the ages of the girls, and were they Muslim young women?
We do not know how many of them were Muslim. We know a lot of them are Kurdish, obviously because ISIS is intimidating the territories and capturing the women. We know, of course, what they are doing to the Yazidis. And even with Muslim secularists who do not want to practice Islam like ISIS, they are doing that to them as well. But to the exact number as to the percentages of what group, we do not know. And it is unfortunate that this is happening and the world is watching.
Right, and there have been reports that at least some of these girls, their families were executed along with them. Brigitte, why were their families executed with them?
They are being used as a teachable moment, as President Obama would like to put it, as a lesson for the other families of the jihadists. Because a lot of secular Islamists or even Muslims who do not adhere to the ISIS ideology, when these radicals are coming to take their daughters, the whole family is standing up to protect the daughters, thinking if we just rally around, they will not be able to take our girls and kidnap them. So ISIS is using mass execution of the families themselves and publicizing it to send a very strong message to other families. It is easier to sacrifice a woman, your daughter, that basically doesn't have much value, especially in Middle Eastern culture and Islamic cultures, where the value of a woman is less than half of a man, is half of that of a man. So they're saying it's better to sacrifice a girl and not put up a fight, otherwise we're going to kill the whole family.
Right, essentially incentivizing future families not to fight for their daughters, not to fight for their sisters, maybe not to fight with their mothers, depending on how old these girls were. Now, we haven't had much of a response besides head shaking here in the West, but what about the regions over there? Any response from Middle Eastern nations, from rebel groups, from the people there?
Middle Eastern nations do not care. The majority of these girls are young, at a younger age, between the ages of 13 and 19, because ISIS is not interested in any older than that, any older women, because their price is less value on the market. They are not going to be basically sold or being chosen by the jihadist fighters. They're not incentive enough. So they are younger. And in the Islamic world, they are not coming up against this practice because, let's face it, in the Islamic world, under Islam, it is a very young age. Actually, in Iran and Saudi Arabia and places like that, a 9-year-old or 12-year-old is the marriage age, and they're actually trying to bring it down to 9 in most majority Islamic countries. So they are not looking at it as abuse against women or against these young girls, and they're just turning a blind eye because under their religion, a woman is the property of that of a man. They can do anything they want to do to them, and this is why the Islamic world is not standing up.
Right, it's just part of their widespread dehumanization of anyone who's not useful to them. So, Brigitte, let's get down to the main problem here and find a solution. How do we defeat this ideology? Because it's not just one group. Every time we defeat one group, another group with the same radical Islamist ideology pops up. How do we defeat this ideology once and for all?
The same way we did it in the 1800s, the same way the Europeans did it, and that's with brutal force. You cannot negotiate with these people. You cannot speak sense into them. They believe they are in a mission by Allah, the creator of heaven and earth. And this is why you mentioned a very important point, is that ideology that is shared by different groups across the world. It doesn't matter what their color is. It doesn't matter what language they speak. You take Boko Haram in Nigeria, for example, or Al-Shabaab in Somalia, or Lashkar-e-Taiba in India, or Ansar al-Sharia in Libya, or ISIS in Iraq, Sham. It doesn't matter what passport they hold, what language they speak, what color their skin is. The ideology bonds them together. So you have to be able to defeat the radicals, to basically give an example to the rest of the Islamic world that Allah will not bless you if you behave this way. You will be crushed, and you will be crushed in a major way, and we're going to reform you. That's exactly what the Europeans did after the 1800s, when the Europeans basically defeated the Islamists and drove them all the way out of Europe, out of India and China, and all the way into Africa and the Middle East. The only language they understand is brutal force. Unfortunately, the West right now is not unified in its battle and its basically will to win the fight against ISIS. And until we get to that point where we are willing to do whatever it takes to defeat it, we're not going to win this war.
So where do we start then? Do we start with the radical clerics who are the ones spreading the poisonous message? Do we start here with the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood within America? Do we start with the militant camps in the Middle East? What's the first step?
With all the above, we need to hold our allies' feet to the carpet. Look at the Saudis. The Saudis are responsible for funding terror around the globe. Look at Iran. Iran is responsible for funding terror around the globe. And what we do with them? We call Saudi Arabia our allies, and we're trying to turn Iran into our ally, despite the fact that Iran doesn't want to have anything to do with us, despite the fact that Iran is developing a nuclear bomb. It's like we resign to the fact that, well, they are our allies. We really cannot do anything about it. Therefore, we might as well work with them. So you have to deport imams preaching hatred in the mosques in America and abroad. You have to fight them worldwide. You have to fight our allies and use any sanctions in our power we can to make sure that those who are funding terrorism and those who are sponsoring terrorism are considered as enemies, not allies.
Right, not pretending, like you said, not pretending to be friends with countries like Iran, when clearly they only have their interest at their motivation, and their interest is to defeat Israel or to defeat the West. Brigitte, we are out of time, but I appreciate you coming on the program tonight.